right. The reading from Journeys Out of the Body by Robert A. Monroe. We're now at chapter 6. I'm going to try a different setting. I don't know if I'm going to be able to read it like this. I turn it back to white. Paradoxically, scientists today can conceive far more easily of the possibility of the area here labeled Locale 3. So Locale 3 than that of Locale 2. Why? Because it fits his latest discoveries in physics. Small bits of evidence he has uncovered in his experiments with matter bombardment accelerators and cyclotrons, etc. The best way to get acquainted with Locale 3 is to take these significant experiments leading up to I might not be able to do this leading up to it directly from the notes. 11:58 afternoon. Vibrations came quickly and easily and were not at all uncomfortable. When they were strong, I tried to lift out of the physical with no results. I can't do it like this. Let's not do it like this. There we go. So the vibrations came quickly and easily and were not at all uncomfortable. When they were strong, I tried to lift out the physical with no result. Whatever thought or combination I tried, I remained confined right where I was. I then remembered I wonder if I could change just the correct contrast. Is that too much? Where's grayscale? Trying to be able to see this better because my dyslexia and MS. Oh, an absolute mess. Too much? See if that helps. If I didn't help at all, but so it's 11:58 afternoon. The vibrations came quickly and easily, and were not at all uncomfortable. When they were strong, I tried to lift out of the physical with no result. Whatever thought or combination I tried, I remained confined right where I was. I then remembered the rotating trick, which operates just as if you are turning over in bed. I started to turn and recognized that my physical was not turning with me. I moved slowly, and after a moment I was face down, or in direction opposite to the placement of my physical body. The moment I reached this 180-degree position, out of phase, opposite polarity, and there was a hole. That's the only way to describe it. My senses, it seemed to be a hole in a wall which was about 2 feet thick and stretched endlessly in all directions in the vertical plane. Periphery of the hole was just precisely the shape of my physical body. I touched the wall. It felt smooth and hard. The edge of the hole were relatively rough. All this touching done with the non-physical hands. Beyond, through the hole, was nothing but blackness. It was not the blackness of a dark room, but a feeling of infinite distance and space, as if I were looking through a window into distant space. I felt that if my vision were good enough, I could probably see nearby stars and planets. My impression, therefore, was of deep outer space beyond the solar system, far in an incredible distance. I moved cautiously through the hole, holding on its sides, and poked my head through carefully. Nothing but blackness. No people, nothing material. I ducked back and hurriedly because of the utter strangeness. I rotated back 180 degrees, felt myself merge with the physical, sat up. It was broad daylight, just as when I had left what seemed a few minutes before. Lapse of time, hour and 5 minutes. 11/18/58, night. The vibrations came in strong, but nothing more. Again, I thought to try the rotation. When I did, it worked. I rotated slowly into an 180-degree position. There was a wall in the hole and the blackness beyond. This time, I was more cautious. Carefully, I reached a hand through into the blackness. I was astonished when a hand touched mine and shook it. It felt like a human hand, normally warm to the touch. After the handshake, I withdrew my hand quickly. Slowly, I reached into the hole again. The hand shook my hand again and placed a card in it. I withdrew my hand and looked at the card. It gave a specific address. I returned the card through the hole, shook the hand again, withdrew my hand, rotated back to normal, merged with the physical, and sat up. Most unusual. I will have to investigate this address on Broadway if it is in New York. 12/5/58 morning. I rotated again and again, found the hole. Still, with a note of caution, I approached the hole. This time, reached through with both hands instantly. Both were grasped by two other hands. Then, for the first time in all my experimentation, my name was called. A voice, feminine, soft, low-pitched, and urged, just as if someone were trying to wake me up from sleep without startling me too much, called, "Bob, Bob." I was startled at first, then recovered and asked, "What is your name?" Always looking for evidential material. When I said these words, there seemed to be intense motion and activity, as if my words had created an effect of dropping a stone into a still lake or pond, like ripplings, scurrying, crackling, etc. The voice repeated my name. I repeated my question, still with two hands holding mine. To be sure, I was completely conscious that I was actually somehow saying the words correctly. I withdrew my hands, rotated 180 degrees, blended with the physical, and sat up physically and vocally spoke the question. Satisfied, I lay back, rotated, and called the question through the hole again. No answer. I kept trying until I began to feel the vibrations weakening. I knew I couldn't hold the condition any longer. I then rotated back into the physical normalcy. 12/27/58 night. Upon setting up the vibrations, I again found the hole as expected. I gathered up courage and slowly poked my head through the hole. The moment I did, I heard a voice say in utter excitement and surprise, "Come here quick, look." I could see no one. This could be due to my closed eyes conditioning in order to hold the vibration effect, i.e. physical seeing distracts. There was still blackness. The other party didn't seem to be coming. So the voice called again, urging and excitedly. The vibrations seemed to be weakening. So I pulled back out of the hole and rotated back into the physical without incident. And then 1959 afternoon. By the way, that's my birthday, January 15th. The vibrations came finally, and I rotated to examine the hole again. There it was, 180 degrees. I was a little nervous when I reached through with one hand. Then I mentally smiled and relaxed, saying to myself, well, be it hand, claw, or paw, I'm friendly. With that, a hand took mine and squeezed it, and I returned the grasp. I definitely sensed the feeling of friendliness from the other side. I returned to the physical rotation after a little difficulty. In my excitement, I forgot to rotate and return to normal signal. January 21, 1959 night. As a preliminary, I tried the hole again. Rotation went smoothly after the vibration started, and then I reached one arm deep into the hole. When I reached in with the other arm, something sharp seemed to dig into the palm of my hand, like a hook, and dug in more deeply than I tried to withdraw it. I finally did so. Somewhat shaken, I felt as if the hook had gone right through my hand. It was not necessarily painful, but the effect was disturbing. I rotated to the physical and looked at my right hand physically. There were no marks or feelings, although the sensation of the penetration after effect was present. January 25th, 1959 night. Another whole experiment with the same pattern of vibration at 180 degrees. Again, I carefully reached into the hole. A hand again took mine and held it firmly, no hook. And then the hand passed mine over to the second hand. I slowly released the second hand and felt upward. There was definitely an arm attached to the hand and a shoulder. I was about to explore more when the vibration seemed to soften. I pulled my arm back and rotated to the physical. There was no indication of the need to return to the physical. No cramped arms or legs. No noise. Probably a momentary sound caused the return. February 5th, 1959 afternoon. Perhaps my concern with the hole is justified. I followed the same approach pattern. Vibration and 180 rotation reached into the hole, and at first felt nothing. I reached deeper, and suddenly it felt as if I had thrusted my hand into electrically charged hot water. Most accurate description. I withdrew it very quickly, rotated, and sat up physically. The physical hand felt numb and tingling. From the position of my body, there was no evidence of poor circulation. The numbness and tingling slowly disappeared in about 20 minutes. February 15th, 1959 afternoon. I experienced with going in and out of vertically, then rotated to the hole, gathered courage, pulled myself through in a sweeping rush, just as swimmer might pull himself through a hole underwater. I felt the other side of the hole, and the wall was similar to my side. I tried to see, but there was still nothing but deep darkness. I decided to settle the matter once and for all. I shoved away from the hole, performed the stretch out in direction exactly on the line away from the hole. What? I started to move slowly and soon accelerated rapidly. I kept moving more rapidly, yet with only a slight sense of friction over my body, moving at what seemed a very high speed. I went on, waiting, expecting to get somewhere. After what seemed a very long time, I began to be concerned. I still saw nothing, felt nothing. Finally, I began to get nervous. Fears about becoming lost began to creep in. I slowed, stopped, turned around, and stretched out back in the direction of the hole. It took just as long to get back as it did to go. I was quite worried when I finally saw the light through the hole up ahead. I dove for it, went through, rotated, sat up physically. Time away was 3 hours and 15 minutes. February 23rd, 1959 night. The hole is populated. This evening, 7:30, I went through vibration 180 rotation, and this time, with much hesitation, I pulled myself through and stood up. I immediately felt myself in the presence of someone standing there. I sensed his presence rather than saw him. Impression male. For some unaccountable reason that I don't yet understand, even regulated now in tranquility, I dropped thankfully in front of him and sobbed. After a moment, I calmed down, carefully backed away, went through the hole, rotated back into the physical, and sat up. Who was it? Why did I act so emotionally? February 27th, 1959 night. Determined to find some more or even one answer about the hole. I went through the vibration 180-degree rotation pattern and deliberately went through. It was still black and dark, but not unpleasant. No hands, no presence. I could feel something solid under me, so I tried very hard to open my eyes and see. I did, and everything came into view. I was standing near a building, more like a barn than a house, on what was wide meadow-like area. I thought I would try to soar up into the sky, deep, clear blue, no clouds, but I couldn't seem to get off the ground. Maybe I had weight here. There was what looked like a ladder 100 feet or so away. I went to it and realized it was a tower of some kind, about 10 feet tall, like a bird needing takeoff room. I climbed the tower to the top, leaped away and take off, and fell promptly to the ground with a solid thud. I guess I was surprised as a bird with clipped wings must feel. I got on my feet and realized how foolishly I was acting. I was not following the proper procedures. Even here, they had to be followed. I held up my hands and arms in the stretched out position, went up easily. I moved slowly over the meadow, enjoying the view and exploration, when suddenly something flew past me. I turned just in time to see it heading for the wall and the hole. I was afraid for some reason that this was something that would go through and try to enter my body, so I wheeled it in flight and dove for the hole. Too late, I realized that what I thought was the hole was a window in the side of the building, and then I was through the window and blackness. I felt around the dark, and there was an outline of the hole. I went through and rotated and sat up in the physical. Everything looked normal. I was in the right place. The time passage was okay, so back I went. Vibrations were still strong, so I rotated 180 degrees and went through the hole and out into brightness. More observant this trip, I noticed two people, a man and a woman, sitting in a chair near the outside of the building. I couldn't make contact with the man, but the woman, no physical identification other than this, seemed to know I was there. I asked her if she knew who I was, but could not get nothing other than a sense of awareness on her part. The vibration started to fade, so I backed away, dove into the hole, rotated, sat up. Total time of the entire experience was 40 minutes. What can be made of these experiments? Taken at face value, they add up at least to the unusual hallucination. At most, the observations show a developmental pattern. First, there seems to be nothing in written history of such experiences as these to offer a comparison. These were not spontaneous instances, but deliberately planned and systematically repeated. As such, they would appear to be unique. Second, the experiment was repeatable by formula. One, the setting up of the vibration condition, followed by 2, 180-degree rotation, and 3, the appearance of the hole. The experiment was performed not once, but at least 11 times. The 180-degree rotation offered interesting speculation. And the reference to out of phase and the apparent identical displacement and an exact opposite deserves the attention of the physicists. Waveform studies of phase relationships applied in this case might prove a fruitful theory. The blackness of the hole was evidently a matter of my own limitation in seeing. Through the early experimentation, the restrictions of vision was self-imposed, as I felt this was a requisite for maintaining the vibration condition. The evidence seems to point to this and the success in seeing when I decided to try and see, and did. It would have been interesting indeed if I had utilized my vision during long exploratory flight. Much might have been learned. The experience of the hands defies explanation. There is no evidence to indicate that I was conditioned or suggested in the first discovery of the hand. Second, later such experiences however, could well have been of this source. But this in no way invalidates the first of these impressions. The card with the address might fall into the classification of past memories associated with the handshake of the first meeting. Unexplained still is the digging of the hook into my hand. The calling of one's name is not uncommon under other circumstances. There are numerous records of such sourceless voices, both in the waking and sleeping state. Various physical theories have been formulated to explain the event with partial success. Most interesting is the report concerning the evident discovery by some other party of my penetration through the hole. In accord with published reports of other experimenters, penetration of the hole was visible to a person or intelligence at some location other than the immediate vicinity. If this followed the pattern of other such reports, the time element would be identical. There is no means to verify this one way or the other, or another. My emotional reaction to the meeting with the someone had many of the aspects of a mystical experience. It is significant that I felt a sense of humble ecstasy which triggered an emotional release. That was the beginning. A series of experiments followed that were remarkable in their consistency of data and defied any historical explanation. The curious intellect cannot dismiss the collective experience of hallucination. Locale 3, in summary, proved to be a physical matter world almost identical to our own. And the natural environment is the same. There are trees, houses, cities, people, artifacts, and all the appurtenances. I don't know how to say that word. I'm going to figure that one out. Nor do I actually know what it means. Never heard of that. Maybe I have, but I just never. Appurtenance and accessory or items associated with a particular activity or style of living.
Appurtenance.
So, in all the appurtenances of a reasonably civilized society, there are homes, families, businesses, and people work for a living. There are roads on which vehicles travel. There are railroads and trains. Now, at first, the thought was the locale 3 was no more than some part of our world unknown to me and those others concerned. It had all the appearances of being so. However, more careful study showed that it can be neither the present nor the past of our physical matter world. The scientific development is inconsistent. There are no electrical devices whatsoever. Electricity, electromagnetics, and anything so related are non-existent. No electrical light, telephones, radios, TVs, or electric power. No internal combustion, gasoline, or oil were found as power sources. Yet mechanical power is used. Careful examination of one of the locomotives that pulled A string of old-fashioned looking passenger cars showed it to be driven by a steam engine. The cars appeared to be more of wood, the locomotive metal, but of a different shape than our now obsolete types. The track gauge was much smaller than our standard track spacing, smaller than our narrow gauge mountain railroads. I observed the servicing of one of the locomotives in detail. Neither wood nor coal was used as the thermal source to produce steam. Instead, large vat-like containers were carefully slid from under a boiler, detached and rolled by a small cart into a building with massive thick walls. The containers had pipe-like protrudences extending from the top. Men working behind shields performed the removal, casually cautious, and did not relax their automatic vigilance until the container was safely in the building and the door closed. The contents were hot, either through heat or radiation. Action of the technicians all seemed to indicate the latter. The streets and roads are different, again, particularly in size. The lane on which vehicles travel is nearly twice as wide as ours. Their version of our automobile is much larger. Even the smallest has a single bench seat that will hold 5 or 6 people abreast. The standard unit has only one fixed seat, that of the driver. Others are much like living room chairs, placed around a compartment that measures some 15 by 20 feet. Wheels are used, but without inflated tires. Steering is done by a single horizontal bar. Motive power is contained somewhere in the rear. Their movement is not very fast, at something like 15 to 20 miles per hour. Traffic is not heavy. Self-powered vehicles exist in the form of a four-wheeled platform which is steered by the feet acting upon the front wheels. A mechanism pumped by the arms transfers the energy to the rear wheel, much like the children's rowing wagon of some years back. These are used for short distances. Habits and customs are not like ours. What little has been gleaned implies a historical background with different events, names, places, and dates. Yet while the stage of man's evolution, the conscious mind translates the inhabitants as men, seem to be identical. Technical social evolution are not completely the same. The major discovery came soon after I gathered the courage to for extended expeditions into Locale 3. In spite of early indications, the people there were not aware of my presence until I met and merged temporarily and involuntarily with one who can only be described as the one who lives there, or the I, depending how you want to say it. He uses that Roman numeral. The only explanation I can think is that the I, or one fully conscious of living and being here, was attracted to or began momentarily to exhibit the body of a person there, much like myself. When this took place, It began to be an automatic process. When I went to Locale 3, I simply looked over his body. There was no awareness of his mental presence when I temporarily displaced him. My knowledge of him and his activities and his past came from his family, what was evidently his brain memory bank. I thought I knew that I was not he. I could feel objectively the emotional pattern of his past. I have wondered what embarrassment I have caused him as a result of periods of amnesia created by my intrusions. Some must have brought him much distress. Here is his life. I, there, at first intrusion, was a rather lonely man. He was not particularly successful in his field, architect, contractor, and not too gregarious. He came of what might be classified as a minor college. He spent much of his early career in a large city in an ordinary job. He lived on the second floor of a rooming house and took a bus to work. It was a strange city to him. He made few friends. The bus, incidentally, was very wide, seating 8 abreast. Seats rose behind the driver in successively higher tiers, so that all could see the road ahead. My first intrusion caught him just as he was getting off the bus. The driver looked at him suspiciously when I tried to pay the fare. It seems that none is charged. The next intrusion came at an emotional crisis. I there met Leah. See? Would that be Leah or not? Let's just say Leah. A wealthy young woman with 2 children, a boy and a girl, both under 4 years of age. She, or Leah, was a sad, wistful, and somewhat preoccupied person who seemed to have experienced some major tragedy in her life. This had some relationship to her former husband, but was not clear. I there met her quite accidentally and was deeply attracted to her. The 2 children found in him a great companion. Leah appeared only mildly interested at the first meeting. Her greatest response lay in her attention to and warmth for the children. A short time later, an intrusion occurred just as Leah and I there had announced to her friends, that they were going to be married. Why would you need to get married? This has a slightly different connotation. There was much consternation among the friends, chiefly due to the fact that it had been only 30 days since some major event had occurred in Leah's life. Divorce, her husband's death, and some physical debilitation. Some physical debilitation. I there was still greatly attracted, and Leah was still sad and introspective. Later intrusion came when Leah and I there were living in a house in a semi-pastoral surrounding. The house sat on a low hill, had long rectangular windows and very wide eaves, much like those of a pagoda. The railroad curved around the hill some 300 yards in distance. the tracks coming from the right in the straight line, then across the front of the hill, then around to the back and to the left. There was deep green grass from the steps of the house down over the roll of the hill. Behind the house, there had a office, a one-room building where he worked. On this occasion, Leah entered the office, came over to the desk, just as I had replaced I there. It's crazy. The workmen want to borrow some of your tools, she said. I looked at her blankly. I was not sure what to say, so I asked her, what workmen? The man working on the road, of course, and she had not yet sensed anything wrong. Before I realized what effect it would have, I said there were no men working on the road. With this, she looked at me intently with a growing suspicion. I was thoroughly unsure of what to do next, so I left my body and returned through the hole. So I left his body. Oh, I get it now. And I returned to the hole. Another eventful intrusion came when I, in quotes, there had set up his laboratory. He was not fully qualified to perform research, but he had decided he could make some kind of new discoveries. He had perhaps, with the assistance of Leah's wealth, taken a huge storage building and divided it internally into small rooms and was conducting some kind of experiments. In the middle of one, I displaced him and his body, but was unable to calculate what was next in his routine. Just then Leah came in with visitors, particularly to show the kind of work he had achieved in the renovated building. I quote, their body stood there unable to speak when Leah asked me to tell them of the work I had been doing. Somewhat embarrassed, Leah led the couple out into another room. I hesitated when perhaps I quote, in quotes, there would have followed. I tried to, in quotes, feel any pattern of activity that he might have been doing. The best I could get was that he had been trying to develop some new form of theatrical entertainment. Theatrical entertainment, designing theater stages, lighting, and sets, all in an attempt to make watching a play a strongly subjective experience. With only this partial success in his recall, I left his body when I heard them returning so as to avoid further complicating his life. A vacation in the mountains was underway at another intrusion point. I, in quotes, there and Leah and the two children were riding along a winding mountain road, each on the self-propelled vehicle described elsewhere. I took over and inadvertently just as they were reaching the bottom of one hill and had started up another. New to the device, I tried to make it go up the next hill and soon rolled off the road into a small pile of dirt. The rest waited while I tried to get back on the road. I muttered that there were better ways of getting around than this. This triggered something in Leah, and she suddenly became quiet. Why, I don't know. I am sure I, in quotes, there did. I tried to tell her that I was not who she thought, then realized that this was only making it worse. I left in quotes, returning to the whole in the physical body. The later intrusions, in quote, I, there, and Leah no longer lived together. He had met with some success, but some action of his alienated her. Alone, he has thought of her constantly and deeply regretted the weakness that made him displease her. He met her casually once in a large city and pleaded with her to let him visit her. She told him that she would not let him do so, and see how things worked out. Oh, excuse me. She told him she would let him do so, and see how things worked out. She lived in the equivalent of an apartment on the third floor of a residential building. A promise to come. Unfortunately, I, in quote, there lost or forgot the address she gave him, and at that last intrusion was a lonely and frustrated man. He was sure that Leah would interpret his loss of the address as indifference on his part. Another example of his instability. He was working but was spending his idle time trying to find Leah and the children. What can be made of all this? In the view of the less than idyllic circumstances, it scarcely qualifies as an escape from reality via the unconscious, nor is it the type of life one might select to enjoy vigorously. One can only speculate. Such speculation of itself must consider concepts unacceptable to present-day science. However, the dual but different life activities may lend a clue to the where, in quote, of locale 3. The most important assumption is that locale 3 and locale 1, here and now, are not the same. This is based upon the differences in scientific development. Locale 3 is not more advanced, perhaps even less so. There is no time in our known history where science was at the locale 3 stage. If locale 3 is neither the known past or the present, and not the probable future of locale 1, what is it? It is not a part of locale 2, where only thought is needed or used. It might be a memory, or racial or otherwise, or a physical earth civilization that predates known history. It might be another earth-type world located in another part of the universe, which is somehow accessible through mental manipulation. It might be an antimatter duplicate of this physical earth world where we are the same but different, bounded together on unit for unit by a force beyond our present comprehension. Dr. Leon M. Lenderman, professor of physics at Columbia University, has stated basic physics is completely consistent with the cosmological concept of a literal anti-world of stars and planets composed of atoms of antimatter, which is to say negative nuclei surrounded by positive electrons. We can now entertain the intriguing idea that these anti-worlds are populated by anti-people whose anti-sciences are perhaps even now excited by the discovery of matter. That was a weird read, that's for sure. It'd be kind of cool if it's real, but it does sound like a little depressing.